another condition which I commonly hear is shoulder dislocation. So one of my patient recently said, "Okay, doctor, I was just sitting and suddenly my shoulder popped out, and I just put it back." So, doctor, what is shoulder dislocation, and what can be the cause for this shoulder dislocation?
Everything is genetic. So that is when you look at. So we do a lot of shoulder research. So we have been looking at what the genetic angle to it.
But if you can first tell me what is shoulder dislocation, what does it?
So
Yeah.
I wanted to because so you asked the question was everything is the answer is everything is genetic.
Right.
You having a muscle tear is genetic. So you having a shoulder dislocation genetic. There are at least 7 to 12 genes which are involved in deciding if this particular shoulder is going to dislocate or not.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is not like
No.
everybody.
No.
So you're born with the genes.
Yes.
Somebody has passed you the genes.
Yes.
So yeah.
Sometimes it's not even passed. It is just
Changes, alteration,
alteration, genetic.
So you're prone to it.
Yes, you're having also everything. If you look at if you have osteoporosis, your bone strength is less. It is genetic. Everything in your body is genetic, and it is already predetermined what is going to happen to you. So if you feel it is destiny, destiny is already in your genes. That's what I would say.
Yes.
So now the shoulder is basically a ball socket joint. It's like this, a ball and a socket. So if these two ball socket joints, that is ball socket joint, is connected by ligaments. Ligaments are belt-like structures which span from here to here. So now, when I take my hand into extreme positions like this, sudden extreme position now, this ligament will snap. It will tear. And once it is torn, it doesn't hold back the joint.
Right.
Then it slips out. That is your shoulder dislocation.
So then it has to be an injury.
Yes. There are cases where there's no injury also. That is called atraumatic. That means happens over a period of time where this particular patient's ligaments would be genetically different from somebody else's.
Okay.
Ligaments would be much more laxer. So they over a period of time can slip, gradually stretch out and cause a dislocation as well. So mostly it is 90% it is traumatic.
Traumatic. Now you told me what the shoulder dislocation is. Now, is it you said it is due to genetics, right? Now, is it common in men, female who are more prone for the shoulder dislocation?
It is not like that. It's mostly even in the genders, it is more of activity related.
Okay.
So if you look like males would be more active, and you can find more of a preponderance in the males.
But it's not due to gender. Basically, you're saying about activity.
It is not gender.
So it's the activity. So what you're saying is not the gender. So even if a woman is who's highly active, this shoulder dislocation can happen even in a female. So it is not gender specific, more about activity specific. Now, the shoulder dislocation, what is the youngest age at which you have seen a patient has come to you for shoulder dislocation?
14 years.
So even at 14 years, shoulder dislocation can happen. Why I'm saying this is most of the time at that particular age, most of the parents may ignore it. They may feel, he's just he or she, teenager making an excuse. But it's not so. So it can happen at this very young age of even 14. So when they have this shoulder dislocation, so it may be, not in hospital, obviously it may happen in the home, in their school or in a sport even. So what should this child or a parent or even the sports coach, what should they do when they have a shoulder dislocation?
So sometimes it goes back by itself. That means it gets self-reduced.
Right.
Otherwise, just splint the hand and go to the nearest hospital so that they do an X-ray and the doctor and the casualty doctor can put it back immediately.
So you're saying once the shoulder is dislocated, if it falls in place, but still they need to visit the doctor later on at least. But if the shoulder is not fallen back in place, they need to splint it. So what position should they splint their shoulder?
So there is a particular position according to the patient's comfort. In shoulder dislocation, hand is normally like that. So don't try to force it into a particular position. So splint it in the position where he is comfortable.
So don't induce pain.
Yes.
And split it.
Yeah, splint it into his most comfortable position.
And then take it to the hospital so that further treatment can be done.
Yes.
So even if the shoulder has come back, they need to meet a doctor, right? No, I don't know.
With a shoulder dislocation, 2-3 things can happen. There could be a small fracture inside. There could be a muscle tear. Muscle tear is especially found in older age group.
Okay.
So this is completely missed out. So it is important to meet a doctor. So they will do an X-ray. And then ultrasound is also a must to rule out any muscle tear. If you miss the muscle tear during the initial evaluation, then you can have a muscle tear, the patient or the shoulder later. But later also it is important to guess. So meeting a doctor is definitely important.
Is a must.
Yeah.
When it is the first time at a reference, you have to meet a doctor. Now, suppose you get a patient, like if I have a shoulder dislocation, what would be the treatment for it? What do you think would be the right way to treat it?
Okay, so in a shoulder dislocation, what you should understand it is your treatment is definitely according to the level of activity of yours. That means if you are an athlete, non-athlete, professional athlete, amateur athlete, then age. If you are a 14-year-old person or in the early 20s, your chance of having a repeat dislocation is around 90%.
There's 90% recurrence will happen.
Recurrence chance will happen.
Okay.
Out of 190 will dislocate again at 20 years of age. So hence, we tell the patient, see, your chances is around 90%. But if you are not an athlete, you can take that 10% chances.
Right.
If you are an athlete, you second time
You
it
can't take
dislocates, your career goes because
Correct.
athletes peak career is 20 25 years. You're finished after that. So your 2-3 years goes in your shoulder trouble. You're out of action. So in an athlete, you don't give a choice. You say that you need to undergo surgery mandatorily if you want to continue into athletic life, even after a first time.
So surgery is only the option.
Yes.
In such cases,
Yes.
there's not like everybody is afraid of surgery.
I know.
So there's nothing without surgery. Such people,
Yeah.
you cannot give them good result. So they will go for a
They will dislocate again.
Yes.
At 20 years age, 90% will dislocate again. 30 years, 80% will dislocate again. 40 years, 70 will dislocate again. When you're 50-year-old, your chance of dislocation is like around 50%.
Because your activity is coming down.
Yes, and that's it. So higher age you grow, so lesser chances. But younger age, you have to inform the patient that this is your chance.
Dislocation is high. Now this you said if it is a high activity or an athlete, if it is a regular house
Same.
or a regular soft
So athlete, you don't give choice. In a non-athlete, you give choice.
but treatment would have still better treatment would have been surgery.
Yes. And at the same time, if the person is dislocating second time, let us think about it logically. If the ligament had healed up properly, will you dislocate second time?
You will not.
Correct. If you're dislocating second time, you need 200% you need surgery because that actually means that ligament is not healed and you're going to dislocate second, third, fourth, fifth. Now, suppose I'm an extremely scared person. I would say, no, doctor, let it be. I don't mind. Let it dislocate. First time, second time, third time. But I don't want any surgery. There are a lot of patients who are really scared. Even in my practice, they say, doctor, do whatever you want, but no surgery. So is it only the inconvenience of dislocation and that, or actually we are harming? What is the worst that can happen if a dislocation is not taken care properly? So what do you think is the worst outcome of it? Right. So answering that, okay, I'll just give you an example of something else. So two cars hit against each other. There's a dent on both cars. First time the same two cars hit, small dent. Next time hit again, more dent becomes bigger. Third time, dent becomes bigger. Same thing happened to the bone. That means every time it dislocates like this, so there's a dent between the bones. So both the ball as well as the socket, there's a denting. Initially the dent could be 3%, then the dent on the socket would be 5%, 10, 15, 20, 25, keeps on going like that. You should understand that the ball socket joint, here the bigger the socket, lesser chances of the shoulder dislocating because it has to travel so much to come out.
Right.
At the same time, because of denting, the socket becomes smaller.
Right.
You easily slip. So your chance of with each passing
It's
dislocation,
more and more, and
your chance of repeat dislocation is also
the injury in the joint is more.
more. So then the surgery will change. Initial cases, you just have to, if my bone loss is very less, 1%, 2%, up to 13.5%, you just repair the ligament back. More than that, if you don't replace the bone, that means surgery changes, bigger surgery called Latade surgery. When you fix the bone back, only then it will become alright. So your surgery completely changes. The complication does, so surgeries can change. So all this happened with delaying it. Then worst thing is, which we don't know, realize right now is that if you follow these patients after 15 years to have not undergone a shoulder surgery for a dislocation, multiple dislocation. They develop arthritis. Joint goes in for arthritis, wear out. And then it will eventually end up in shoulder replacement. So fix it early, have a stable shoulder so that it doesn't.
So even what I'm understanding from the discussion is, in the beginning, when the shoulder dislocates for the first time, it's a very simple problem with a simple solution. But due to whatever cause, maybe the fear, or unavailability of a specialist, or not being sure, whatever reason, one avoids the surgery and suffers the active life with a shoulder problem. Not only that, they're further complicating their recovery in the future. So, as even doctor is saying, in the beginning, the solution is much simple. The surgery is straightforward, and the recovery is also much quicker. But as multiple dislocation happens, the more and more we are pushing the problem, the solution also becomes much more tougher. So even in the end, you may need even a shoulder or a joint replacement. So basically, one needs to decide what kind of life you want. Just your fear or your unawareness or ignorance shouldn't make the decision for you. Now, doctor, I know for a fact, many times the patient, though they're coming to us, they feel, oh, it's he or she is a surgeon, so definitely surgery is what is advised. So even in my practice, I have this issue, but luckily, since I'm a cosmetic surgeon, my patients are coming asking for surgery. But as I've heard from you and other friends, uh, patient feel if they come to you for a problem and if you advise surgery, you're totally wrong. So this is a very tricky thing. And there is always a person or another doctor who would say, ki, okay, fine, surgery is not needed. I can manage without surgery. But one needs to understand that particular doctor may not be a specialist in that particular condition. Hence, may be giving you a non-surgical opinion too. But whatever we decide, I always tell in all my podcasts, the burden of doing a research is with you. It's your life, it is your joints, it is your problem. You need to research properly and only then take a call. Don't go with a blind thing. No, surgery is bad. No, non surgical will be better. No. Take a right consultation and then do the right kind of a decision. Now, this was about dislocation of shoulder.
Again, I add to that point. So I face this regularly because in my practice, madam, you must be deciding. How do you decide uh, on a treatment for a patient? Or let me ask you the other way.
Correct.
If a patient is coming to you, what decides that you have to operate or do a particular, forget the operation? On what basis will you treat treat such a patient?
So, doctor, in my practice, though, because since I'm a cosmetic surgeon, most of my patients come asking for surgery. So, I actually need not convince them for a surgery at all. But definitely, so my only role is whether this particular surgery, what they're asking, whether it will be suitable for their case or not. Because most of the cases in my patient, what I see, they have done a lot of Google research. So they're not even knowing whether this particular procedure, what they're asking, is doable for them or not. Many a times they come with the expectation that, I can really transform the person, which may not be possible. So that's my role is whether this particular condition, this particular treatment, based on that, I guide them.
How do you guide them? That means my question was like, if I'm a patient, I'm coming to say that, okay, I see, doctor, I need a nose job. Looks like my nose is not perfect. So, on what basis will you advise me? You look at my nose.
So we have our own clinical assessment, like in nose, we have certain measurements, like what is the height of the nose, how's the tip looking, what is the shape of the nose. Similarly, for every part of the face or the body, we have certain clinical assessment. So once I have done this clinical assessment, I would lay out my plan to the patient, both surgical and non-surgical. Like for certain condition, surgical would be the only option, and for certain, we can't correct with surgery, and hence we have to go with non-surgical. But everything cannot be done with surgery, everything cannot be done with non-surgical method. So these, I would lay out this plan saying that, okay, these are the things which I can do and this will correct. And but many a time patient may not agree to what we see. So in such cases, I would say, okay, go ahead, do your Google research or whatever, and meet another consultant and come back. But many a times the patient may insist on certain things which actually may not be looking good at all on them, because they can't imagine how it will work out. So depending on our experience, we know certain things are not good in certain patient and it will not give the result needed. So in such patient, even if they insist, then I say sorry, I'm not the right person, I cannot do. So yes, it is all about ethics.
So the question is about ethics in medical practice. So I think today we are in an era where ethics is slowly going down the drain. So, so I would, by the way, I would decide on a surgery is if a patient comes. And if I looking at the scientific evidence and today's accepted practice in medicine, if this, because we discussed about the shoulder dislocation, according to these principles, if this particular patient requires surgery, I would advise surgery.
Need it, yes, yeah.
And if it does not advise surgery, 100% I will say surgery is not required. You please do like this. And even if you force on me, I will not do this.
Exactly.
But it's the other way around also. That if you say that no, so doctor, I don't want to operate, then I say the example I tell this patient is, see, you suppose somebody has a heart attack. What is a heart attack? There could be a block in your artery. It is a mechanical issue. And unless and until the cardiologist will say, let's put a stent. If it doesn't do the stent, you'll have a permanent cardiac damage. So certain things are mechanical. You have to advise him to it. And then again, you said a very important point, because uh, you would have advised surgery, then this same patient would have gone to somebody
Some other
else,
specialist.
and that particular doctor would have said, no, surgery is not required. So we can't control what other people would be saying. So in my practice, I would take a decision on the scientific evidence. And also I do one more thing. I decide that if this particular patient is my mother or my father or my brother,
How would you
how would I treat him? I would treat him the same way. That will give you a clear answer to your things.
So the decision doesn't change on who the person is. It is, what do I say? It's not. It's a very objective decision making for a surgery and not a subjective. So it doesn't matter whether it's even your relative has come. So the treatment will not change. It may be even the prime minister. So the treatment remains the same, whether it's a prime minister or a wage worker or whatever. If a person needs a particular surgery, he or she needs the surgery.
I don't compromise on anything.
Exactly.
So I tell the patient, see, I can do a surgery almost at zero cost to you from my surgeon side. I will not charge you. But if the implant has to be, I will not compromise on the number of stitches, number of anchors, number of hospital stay, the medication. I don't compromise on. So we, as you said, we are doing a lot of work, okay, which is like people know about only like how much a surgery costs, but they don't sometimes realize how much the doctors are actually trying to do to help patients.
I would like to insist even here one particular point. It's most of the times it's not even the money which matters, which decides what surgery you're doing. So like all of us, most of the doctors, we do lot of free service, but that doesn't mean if I have done a surgery free, I will be doing under treatment or I will not be doing my best. So once a surgeon decides a surgery, it will be always for the best. It is not depending on the money, it doesn't depend on who the person they are treating. It is basically what the condition needs, what kind of treatment is needed. So this understanding needs to come from the patient side. We cannot do anything about it. So again, I would say it's the destiny where it would take the particular patient.
Yeah. So one point again I would add here is that when you come to a doctor and if the doctor is really genuine, you might not listen, you might not hear exactly whatever you want.
Exactly.
So if you're coming to me, I'll give you a right advice. It might not be a very happy thing for you to listen to, but that would be definitely a genuine advice.
So yeah, it is not the doctor's job to make a patient happy. It's sad that many a times patient put on saying that doctor was not talking to us nicely, or it was not entertaining. So the doctor's job is to give you the right advice and what will be the best thing for you, even if it causes some disappointment or some sadness. So please, doctors are not meant for entertaining. It doesn't happen like that. So we spoke a lot today about shoulder problems, but I'm extremely inquisitive to know whether shoulder joint can also be replaced. Like we all know, after a particular age, knee joint replacement has become very common. But what about shoulder joint? Can shoulder joint be replaced? Is there a thing called shoulder replacement? What do you say, doctor?
Yeah, definitely. Shoulder replacement is a surgery which is done, and since I'm a shoulder specialist, I would be doing more and more of shoulder replacements. So, if you look at the frequency, how many shoulder replacement happen? How many patients actually require shoulder replacement? So, I'll tell you the frequency. If you see 100 knee replacements, then one shoulder replacement. So that is the frequency because it is less effective, but definitely it is effective. It can be affected mostly because of arthritis. So joints develop arthritis like knee arthritis or wear out you have osteoarthritis. Sometimes the shoulder also you can have. You can have rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, any kind of arthritic condition. And another common condition is, as Madam was saying, that when people neglect conditions.
Yes.
So when the shoulder has a muscle tear or a rotator cuff tear, and if it is neglected over the next 5 to 10 years, it will end up in arthropathy or arthritis. Now, shoulder replacement is of two types. If the patient is younger and if only the joint is damaged and muscles are normal,
Good. Okay.
it is called total shoulder replacement.
Total shoulder replacement is younger people
And muscle is
with muscle is normal.
normal.
Okay.
At the same time, if it is an older patient above 65 years of age and the muscle is damaged, then you need reverse shoulder replacement. It is reverse because normal shape is like this. The ball socket joint, the shape is like this. It is reverse because the position of the ball, so it is like this.
So, doctor, what I'm understanding, shoulder replacement is definitely a procedure, is done. Depending on your age and the muscle, you either do a total shoulder replacement or a reverse shoulder replacement. Now, having said that, and you're saying knee replacement is much more common, much more higher incident due to shoulder.
Compared to shoulder.
But one of the reason I think, in my opinion, also is like because of weight bearing.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, big weight.
Putting weight on the knee, so more wear out.
And shoulder, many a times we feel it's okay, just little limited movement.
Yeah.
Depending on your lifestyle.
Right.
If you're not a very active person, you just ignore. Because you can do this job still.
Good.
Right? So your job may not be really affected with the shoulder issue.
Good.
Now, we have spoken so much about shoulder. But one of the main concern about anybody is, especially when they're getting a bone surgery, whatever reason, how would they recover it there?
On average, it takes around 3 months to around 6 months.
Right.
Depends upon what is the kind of surgery which we do.
Right.
If it's a shoulder dislocation, the patient normally recovers by 3 months doing normal activities, doing normal movements of hand and enough strength. Playing sport after shoulder dislocation surgery is 6 months. If it is a muscle tear surgery, then it takes around 3 months to 4.5 months to recover to normal.
Okay.
Sports activities 9 months to 1 year. That's average time.
Yeah. So, what you're saying, so recovery is long.
Yeah.
It's not like you operate me today
Yeah.
and tomorrow I'm okay.
Right.
So, on average, to even begin with, is 3 months.
Correct.
Minimum.
Minimum.
And it is depending on the surgery and depending on your recovery, it can go up to 1 year too.
Yes.
To go back to especially activities, sports activities,
Correct.
right? But does it mean that everybody, 100%, will recover in this time?
No. It's very variable. That's what I said. I gave you a huge margin of 3 months to like around 6 months time. Because the recovery is according to the patient's makeup. That means how your body is, the body's healing potential, the scarring tendency, age. Many things are involved in the healing process. We can give only the average timelines. Some patients recover exactly in 3 months' time. 2.5 months people can recover. Some people take definitely more time. The only thing we can do from our side is do the physiotherapy process correctly, meticulously, a lot of time and effort in the physiotherapy process. That is the only thing we can do to, fast forward.
So what you're saying is like, repeatedly you've been insisting is that post-procedure,
Yeah,
there is a lot which patient need to.
absolutely.
It's not like you come to me today, get operated and it's done,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So your part you have done perfectly good.
Yeah.
In every patient, you would want to give
Yes.
your best result.
Yes.
I feel not only you, every doctor.
Every
for the
surgeon,
matter of
every
fact.
doctor would
Yes,
definitely.
it's not the money there.
No.
We love as surgeon, we take pride in our success.
Correct.
So that also patient has to understand when we operate is not only about you.
Yeah.
It's about us also.
Yeah.
We want to be successful in every surgery. We want our failure rates to be near zero.
Nobody wants a failure rate.
Right? So our part is done. But recovery is in your hand.
Yes.
How much you follow. I think lot of times, even you must have seen, even in my practice, the patient is lost to follow. They never come back to you.
Yeah.
They come back after 6 months, 1 year.
Yes.
When the very important healing phase is gone.
Yeah.
They have lost it.
Right.
So they think, I got it operated.
That's
Even
right.
if I don't do anything, in 6 months I will.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. That is not even in 1% can it happen that you operate and you're done. So the recovery, the follow-up with your primary surgeon, whoever has operated, going back to him or her is extremely important. Then doing adequate and proper physiotherapy again. It's not enough if you do something.
No.
So that physiotherapist, whomever you may go to, has to have a communication with your surgeon.
Right. Absolutely.
Because he or she is the only person knows what has been done for you.
Correct.
Right? So there has to be a proper communication between the surgeon and the therapist.
Right.
If you have a therapist who say, no, I don't care, I'll do what I want, that will not work. If you have a surgeon who says, I have operated, now it's up to you, that also will not work.
Correct.
So your surgeon also has to be a person who will give you holistic treatment,
Absolutely.
will look at you till the end,
Right.
till you recover.
Right.
Similarly, the therapist.
Yes.
So we have discussed in depth what is the recovery. Yes, recovery is tough. Yes, recovery is painful. Yes, recovery is even time consuming. And even the cost is involved in it. Having said all this, do you have an option? Once you have an injury, you need to take care of it. In my life, I also decide everything like that. Do I have an option? Do I want to be debilitated? Do I want to be without doing certain activities of my life? If the answer is no, then I have to go through this recovery. There's no other choice. There's no shortcut to that. Now, doctor, we discussed a lot about recovery and all that. Today, I see in Bangalore especially, there's a sudden increase in runners. And there's a sudden increase. I'm in my apartment, so I see a lot of women, especially going for strength and muscle training. Suddenly they're lifting weights.
Yeah.
There are a lot of gym which is, it's on, what do you say, hitting the business kind of, they're doing a lot of exercise. Now, what do you think about this? Like one fine day, I'm like 45 now. Suppose I've not done any exercise. I have a sedentary lifestyle. How good, how safe it is suddenly to get into this sport or a gym activity.
See, with increase in age, the body is less flexible, more prone to injuries. Your recovery times is more, and even if you do an exercise recovery time is much more. So you are highly prone to injuries, especially if you are with increase in age. So what you said is right, because definitely with more awareness, people want to get into more kind of fitness. Nowadays, if I actually tell a patient that hey, you have an injury, just rest it for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I can't go to gym. I said, yeah, you can't go to gym for 3 weeks. So definitely there is an increase in the activity level. With more activities, you see more sports injuries. With more age and less flexibility, less of conditioning, definitely you see that. Now, question is, how do you protect yourself? How do you be safe? One is your conditioning process. You need a gradual strength and conditioning process, especially if you're not used to any kind of workouts. You can start at any age, but the process has to be very gradual. I believe in the rule of 10. Rule of 10 basically means today if you are doing 100 minutes of workout, 10 minutes more tomorrow. And that is every, so if you're doing 10 push-ups, 11 push-ups tomorrow. So the rule of 10 normally helps because there's no sudden increase in your activity level. So this is very important that you go very gradually and slowly. And what is the other question you're asking?
So, one you said you can start at any age and have to go gradually.
Yeah.
But how safe is it?
It is quite safe, but again, knowing our body's limitation is important. So my body is going to be very different from somebody else's body. So if you expect me to do 100 push-ups, it might not happen. So you should not be forced to do those kind of activities. So I would say that individualized, personalized training with a very good coach or a trainer who will look at your stamina capacity, gradually building on it is very important. If you don't do that, one, if you are being pushed into activities which are not used to, sudden increase in your intensity and duration of training can cause injuries. That's why I see injuries now. So adapt your exercises to your body and your conditioning. And there should be a gradual increase in your strength and conditioning effort.
So, what we have understood today with Dr. Ayyappan is definitely exercising, muscle strengthening, hitting the gym, all are good. But blindly following a fad without understanding it, what's right, what's wrong, what is your body stamina, what is good for you, just don't go blindly into it. You need a proper trainer who has good knowledge about all the muscles, strengthening, and more than that, you need to know your own body. Just don't fall into it, and as he's also saying in his experience, he's seeing a lot more injuries following these kind of trend since the time this has increased. So to avoid that, do it more safely and with a good understanding. So doctor, this was about the general people when they are going for muscle training and all that. But I'm sure since you're a sports specialist injury, so what are the common kinds of injury you see in a sports person? And those injury, following that injury, how's their career? Are they able to get back to the sports life?
Right. So injury depends upon what kind of sport you're involved in. For example, somebody's into badminton, so you could have there's something like upper limb injuries, sometimes called slap tears. So especially if you're a basketballer, baseballer, or something like that, throwing kind of games. Cricketer depends if you're a bowler or a batsman. So if you're a footballer, more of knee injuries, rugby, those kind of things. And even if you're a footballer, most common injury would be the ankle injury. So all that you see a different patterns of injuries, different types of injuries according to the sport which you are engaged in. Next question you asked was, are they able to go back to sport? And again depends upon the correct intervention. So if you mean the right specialist, get the right evaluation is done. If you do an MRI, sometimes we might ask for an early scan, MRI. So when MRI tells us in detail this is the kind of injury, then definitely there is a very high chance of you going back to complete normalcy. Depends upon early diagnosis and the right treatment.
Right. So it's not the end of the case.
No.
You can really get back to sports again.
Definitely.
But if I have to understand, not every athlete is undergoing an injury.
Yeah.
Right? But some people are getting repeated injuries.
Right.
Right? So is there a particular thing which they are doing in a wrong way that they are getting injured? Or they could have prevented? What are the things a sports person can do to reduce the chance of sports injury?
The proper conditioning. So working with a good strength and conditioning coach and a good physiotherapist is very important. So there are three people involved in an athlete's career. A coach, which works with like a team coach, a personalized coach. You need a specific physiotherapist who's really specialized in that kind of work. Next is a strength and conditioning coach. So if you do have a combination of this, a coach would put you when to actually time you into play. Likewise, you don't do that, you don't do this particular action, it is actually not good for you. A physio can rehab you fast, can increase your flexibility by certain exercises. But the role of an SNC coach is the key in strength and conditioning coaches is very important in career as well. So with these, they will be able to reduce the injury. Yes, absolutely. And since we have understood there's nothing to feel disheartened, so it's possible completely. In I would say in majority of the cases. Right. You're not even saying in the minority. In majority of the cases, with the right intervention at the right time, they can go back to exactly at the pre-injury level. It's very, very rare that you can't. Again, getting a good surgery, right intervention, and good rehab after that, And again, going back to a strength and conditioning coach who's going to put you back to the sports.
Everything will do.
He's the key to be fit, have a 100% recovery back.
Okay, I think we today had a really insight about a lot of things like shoulder, sports injury, orthopedician's perspective, what are their difficulties, and what would be the patient need to do from their end. With this, I would really like to thank Dr. Aipan for having come as a guest on my podcast channel, Nothing But Truth. If you have any queries and you would like to know more in detail about anything related to medicine, you can drop in a comment and we will try to cover up in the future podcast channels.
Thank you so much, madam. It's really wonderful to have me here, and I'm really thankful, and also to your team who has really helped us on this day.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Being a Sunday, so my entire team is up trying to record it.
Thank you so much, madam. Really nice one.